Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're back here with my good friend Dwight Paton.
G'day, mate. How are you? Sorry.
What's so funny?
I wasn't sure whether I needed to talk then or not. I was like, is it my turn to talk or what are we doing?
Well,
But
you could
yeah.
have just said hello. That's what people usually do
Is
when
it?
they
Okay.
start a video.
Okay, well, g'day and hello.
Was it last week you kind of assumed a new identity? You actually became an Australian citizen. Has anything changed for you? Does it feel different? Do you just eat Vegemite toast for breakfast every day now?
Yeah, well, maybe I need to change the way I talk, but no, you're quite right. After 22 years of living in Australia, I thought it was about time to become an Australian citizen. So now I'm a dual citizen, so New Zealand and Australia. So I'm still going to back the All Blacks in the rugby, so don't worry about that. But happy to be true blue, happy to be Aussie, fair dinkum, throw another shrimp on the barbie. So
Yeah, that's it.
obviously you've been here a long time now. What do you love about living in Australia?
Well, I think for me, it was just sort of in a way, opportunity or freedom to really do what you want to do. I don't think I would have ever been a full-time professional bird photographer still living in Germany. And
Right.
of course, all the parrots here, that was definitely something that I obviously love.
Let's be honest, that was the only reason.
It was a main draw for sure, having all these beautiful birds around and being able to photograph all the parrots and cockatoos. So that's definitely a big part, but I really just enjoyed the opportunity and how nice everyone is. I feel like people enjoy life in Australia still, and I feel like
Mhm.
in some other places that has sort of gone missing a bit.
All the sunlight we get and all the birds.
Never any cloud here, no dark light at all. There seems to be a common theme running through our chats here that every time I see you in one of these videos, you put some different massive piece of equipment on your table. What have you brought this time?
Well, what I have before me today, I have the Nikon or Nikon. Nikon.
Well, that's a tricky one, isn't it? I always say Nikon, but I think depending where you are, it might be Nikon, it could be Nikon or Nikon if you're in Germany. So there's probably a lot of different names for the same thing, really. And I guess you will tell us what the camera is called. And then the second question could be, is it Z something or Z something?
Okay, so from my Australian perspective, it is definitely a Nikon and it's definitely a Z5 Mark II. That's how I pronounce it.
See, for me, it's actually a bit of both. I like to say Nikon, that flows easier off my tongue, but then I definitely also say Z5 or Z6. So maybe this is my way of trying to please everyone, saying it half American and half the rest of the world.
Obviously, we're having trouble with the pronunciation of Nikon and Nikon. How often have people got your name wrong? Because obviously in Australia, we would call you Jan.
Well, I always thought I had an easy name, Jan, right? 3 letters. Who can get that wrong? But then here, everyone thinks I'm like an old lady. So definitely not easy with names, and I definitely know all about it. But same do you, right, Dwayne?
Yeah, it's dude, it's dude. Yeah, look, I've had that my entire life, to be honest. My name is actually the merge. If people are curious, I think my mum wanted Dwayne and my dad wanted Wade, so they just joined the two together and got Dwade. So yeah, look, I'd love to know in the comments, how do you pronounce it? Let us know down below, and we'll tell us what country you're from. And the lens I have here is the 180 to 600, so I'm going to be using this in the field for the next few weeks.
It definitely seems like an interesting combination. It also doesn't break the bank. And if the camera
Yeah.
performs well in the field, I think it could definitely be a nice sort of entry into the Nikon lineup of lenses and cameras.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking forward to, because we do often have the luxury of using the higher level gear, but that is obviously not affordable to a lot of people. So I'm really looking forward to trying this out.
You have a brand new camera in front of you, and you and I have obviously used dozens and dozens of different cameras over the last few years, basically every single offering from most of the brands. But what I always wonder, what were the cameras that sort of truly made a difference in your photography career or life? Like what really stood out? What camera has really progressed you as a photographer as well, as opposed to just getting another nice toy, but a kind of feeling similar or not like a huge step up?
That's a really good question, and it's hard to break down specifically. Let's try and think about Micro Four Thirds, APS-C, and full frame. I'll try to keep it brief. In terms of Micro Four Thirds, I happen to have it here, is the Olympus OM1. I did a review of the camera, the second version, in my last video. I think for Micro Four Thirds, this camera blew me away because it's like a pro body at a much cheaper cost. It's got 50 frames per second, pre-capture, and the autofocus is just amazing. In the Micro Four Thirds realms, this was a pretty amazing camera. I know a lot of people are really happy with it. If we then move up to the APS-C, I think it's very hard for me to go past my 7D. You thought I was going to say 40D, didn't you? But
The old trusty 40D.
that's right. I do pull this out from time to time. My very first camera. This isn't the camera that changed everything for me. This is obviously the camera that started everything. But after this, I upgraded to the Canon 7D. And that camera changed the world for me. This was 10 megapixels. It was like 9 focus points, maybe 5 or 6 FPS. Got the 7D and it was like, I forget now, it's 16 or 18 megapixels, way more focus points, way more FPS. And that body was just game changing. And I used that for a couple of years actually on that 405.6. The reason I don't have it is I killed it. So it went for a swim. It's no longer with us,
Well,
unfortunately.
the first is always special, has a special place in our heart. But then I think the 7D itself, or the 7D series, has kind of become like an icon or like a legend in the photography world, sort of as a camera, similar to maybe the Nikon D500, where people just loved using that camera, having that extra reach. So I can see why you like that for sure. And then any camera else that really stood out for you?
I happen to have it here. I was prepared. Is the original Canon R5. This camera is incredible and it's still incredible today. I originally got the R6, if you remember. You got the R5. I
Yeah.
got the original R6 and I thought, oh, I can't afford to go up to the R5. I thought the R6 will be fine. I think I used yours or borrowed yours and I was like, no, I have to buy this camera. It was one of those instant feelings of like, okay, this is something else. And I bought this and I was so happy. The image quality, the autofocus, everything about this camera. And I think this might be one of Canon's best jumps from its previous model, like the
I think the
5D4.
biggest ever, really.
Yeah, just it's incredible, really. So the 5D3 was another really good camera, but R5 for me, hands down. What about yourself?
Well, we're definitely a bit Canon biased here because when the R5 came out, we both only just started making YouTube videos, didn't have all
Yes.
the gear that we have now. But I would say definitely the jump from Sony, it would have been the jump to the A1, the original A1.
Mm-hmm.
And for Canon,
Mm-hmm.
it would have been the jump from the DSLR cameras to the R5. And you're like, your mind was just blown, like the autofocus tracking, the frames per second, especially for Canon. You had like a 5D Mark
Yes.
IV with a tiny buffer, few autofocus points that sometimes hit the bird, sometimes didn't hit the bird. Even if it was on the bird, it was always a bit of a gamble. Then you had, what, 5 or 6 frames per second. And then otherwise you would have the very expensive 1DX series that shot
Mm-hmm.
high frames per second. And now suddenly you had it all in the R5. Eye
Yeah.
checking autofocus, that was fantastic, 20 frames per second. So that jump was really tremendous. And I felt like that was something where my abilities suddenly got better because of the camera.
Yeah.
And suddenly you could just capture action in a much easier way. With and 5D4 often didn't even try because it was basically impossible. Whereas now, suddenly you could capture all these birds in flight and get some amazing action shots. And that's actually something that has progressed throughout the years where the cameras have improved, but nothing has been as big of a jump for me, at least. Like the jump from a 5D4 to an R5 was like mind blowing.
So what other brands made a massive difference to you? I think I know. I've got an idea which camera has changed for you that you weren't expecting and you've loved.
Which one is that?
The Sony A9 III. You've shown some shots you've captured with that, and I'm not sure you could have captured those with any other camera, or it would have taken a long time.
And see, I came prepared as well. There's one on my desk here. And it's definitely true. I just said that with the original R5, you could suddenly capture so much more action. And that
Mm-hmm.
has truly progressed in the A9 III now to a completely new level where you can capture short bursts of action at 120 frames per second and just capture scenes that you can't even see with your bare eye. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what I find really fascinating. As an
Mm-hmm.
all-round camera, this would definitely be not my first choice.
Okay.
But as a specialized camera to photograph fast action, I feel like there's hardly anything better out there. So the A9 is definitely a fantastic camera, but I don't know exactly where it would rank in my top 3 wildlife cameras. I know there's a couple other cameras that are probably better all-rounders that I might rank ahead of it, but what about you if I put you on the spot here and say, what's your top 3 wildlife cameras that you've used over the last few years or decades?
I think the R1 just ticks all the boxes for me. It's the user experience of that camera. You put that camera up to your eye, it's like IMAX. It's just a whole nother world. And the viewing experience is great, 40 frames per second, the low light performance. Overall, that camera, I think, would be my go-to. I don't own it yet. Maybe I need to, but I need to borrow it to try it. But that would be up there. The second one would be the A1 Mark II. I think that's a really, really solid all-round camera. The sensor's really good. It just seems to work really well. And then on the Nikon side of things, I would probably go with the Z8, to be honest. The Z9 was just a bit too heavy for me. It was just a bit too big, and I don't often use a battery grip, so the Z8 I think would work well. So for me, those three cameras would be the ones that I'd probably gravitate towards. Yourself?
What I would recommend and say is probably the best wildlife cameras doesn't necessarily go hand in hand what I'm using, because I think for most people a Nikon Z8 with one of their top lenses, for instance like a 600 PF, is just such a solid choice that doesn't break the bank. It's still very expensive, but compared to what you pay for a similar setup, I think it's very attractive and so small and light. So that's why I would rank the Z8 definitely in my top 3 of wildlife cameras. Next, I would have the A1 Mark II and the R5 Mark II, because I think it's very similar cameras from different brands, but they both give you that great experience in the field, high frames per second, and also great image quality. And they're just fantastic kind of all around do it all camera. And to round off my top 3, I would have another shared place with the R1 and the A9 III. A9 III for that amazing speed and its capabilities. And then, as you say, the R1 just for the overall amazing experience using the camera body. All the buttons are in the right places. It lies great in your hand. It's super fast, great autofocus, amazing low light capabilities, and of course that viewfinder. Once you've used that viewfinder, you really don't want to use any other viewfinders anymore. I don't rank it high because the 24 megapixels can still be a little bit of a drawback here and there, but overall it's also an incredible camera. And I think what this really shows is that you can't really go wrong anymore buying gear in this current market, can you? Like any camera you buy, any lens you buy will basically give you a fantastic experience. You can definitely capture nice and sharp photos with it as well.
Yeah, and that's exactly the reason I've got this gear in front of me. We haven't mentioned, we're talking about more expensive gear, and a lot of people can't afford that. I'm confident that I'm going to get some amazing quality, image quality out of this body. And this is sort of a full frame, more entry level body. If you've got good light, at least, there's not a huge difference between these really expensive kits and these much more affordable ones. And look, heck, I can even get some really nice shots on this combo here. So don't feel like you have to spend huge amounts of money. Overall, everything's gone up. Does that make sense? Like the gap between the very best and the bottom is closing all the time, in my opinion. And these high level bodies, it's more about like the frames per second you mentioned and the buffer size and the pre-capture. It's more of those sort of features that are becoming more important.
Definitely, if you look back to the DSLR days, there was a lot of lenses that weren't fully sharp. You had to sort of micro adjust your cameras. You would buy a camera, you'd buy a lens, but you weren't really sure, is it going to work together? Am I going to get great results? Whereas I feel like with the mirrorless cameras now, you usually buy a camera, you buy a lens, and even if you buy a lens like an RF 100 to 400 with a Canon R8 that costs you under $3,000 altogether, you will get some really nice, sharp and crisp results with that, and also take fantastic video files. So the technology itself has really come a long way.
All right, so there's kind of a chicken and egg scenario where we often get asked, do you buy the lens or do you buy the camera? And traditionally, I've always said, buy the lens. Like if you get a good lens, it'll last you forever and you can just upgrade the body as you go. Is that still the case, or what's your feelings on that now? Which comes first?
I think it's a very tricky topic, because I think in the end, what you want to achieve is that your camera and your lens's abilities kind of match. I would try to avoid buying a really old camera with a new high-end lens, or super high-end camera like an R1, and then use that 5.6 400mm lens that you have that doesn't even have image stabilization. Because then one of the two will always be held back by the other part and can't really show its full potential. So I think finding lenses and cameras that work well together is definitely key here. And then I think we have to make a distinction between whether you just want to buy one camera and one lens, or you already have a big kit. If you're just wanting to buy one wildlife lens and camera combo, I would always look for the lens first, find what suits me the best, and then find a matching camera. Whereas if you already have a big kit like I have, for instance, the changes between the cameras actually become more and more important. And now whenever I usually switch over to another brand, I'm drawn to the A9 III, for instance, or I want to upgrade my own kit, I'm often now looking at cameras because some of the small changes like pre-capture and RAW 30, 40, 120 frames per second suddenly make a big difference, but they might not make as much of a difference when it just comes to buying one lens and one camera.
Yeah, it's a really good point. And I think that's one of the reasons people like the OM systems in my last review is that they can buy sort of the OM1 and maybe a 100 to 400, and they've got a huge range and they can use that, or
Yeah,
even the R7 and 100 to 400. I think you're exactly right. And this kit in front of me, this is a very capable kit. Yeah, you might need a wider lens if you want landscape, but I know a lot of people now are just using their phone. So a lot of people have told
yeah.
me, look, I just have a 180 to 600 in my phone and I'm kind of good to go. And that's
Yeah.
kind of a cool thing if you just don't want to pack too many lenses or change lenses.
So now we talked so much about gear to please the algorithm, but what about a moment in your photography career that really progressed you as a photographer or really felt like a big step ahead? Is there certain moments that you feel like, yes, I've gone somewhere and suddenly I've became so much better almost in an instant?
Wouldn't we love that to be able to just become amazing straight away for sure? And I kind of had a moment like that. I had a few moments that were just like, bing, like a light bulb went off, a light bulb moment. In the comments, let us know what your light bulb moment was. But you're right, we've talked about gear a lot. And I had this combo. So I had this 400, this 40D, but my photos were okay, but they weren't that good. And I was looking at yours going, how does he do this? It's magic. But unfortunately, I didn't know you then, so I didn't have the ability to learn from you directly. But I did have someone nearby that was very, very helpful to me, and that was Hindercock, which is a good friend of both of ours, and another person, Matt Jones, who I've talked about. I was very fortunate that I reached out to them and said, look, I'm just a beginner. I'd love to learn more. Would you be willing to let me tag along? So we went to the beach or went to a wetland and getting our gear out, and I'm expecting to go walking around and there's some Bartel Godwits not far away. And Hein pretty much says, yeah, g'day, how you going? Introduce ourselves. And then he goes and runs and jumps in the mud. And I'm standing there going, what is this guy doing? He's laying in the mud, crawling towards these birds. And I'm just like going, what? I don't know. I'd never seen it before. So it was a very strange sight to see this. And he was like happy as a pig in mud, as they say. And I thought, oh, I guess I'm going to have to try that. So I did
And you
exactly
loved
that.
it.
I loved it. Who would have known? And
Can't stop doing it.
I can't stop doing it now. My favorite place is laying in the mud. But it was just that simple thing of getting down low, changing your perspective, just crawling, and that was just a game changer for me. My photos instantly improved, and I was just very, very grateful. Did you have a similar experience? Like, when did you go from your very first camera to this light bulb moment?
Well, I actually had a different moment in mind, but now that you mentioned the mud, I remembered back to my mud days, and it was actually one of the first few times I had my professional gear and I went out with a photographer that I really admired. I just reached out to him on one of these Instagram, or wasn't Instagram back then, it was like one of these online forums.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, oh, maybe we can go somewhere. We're like, yeah, we could go to the Baltic Sea back in Germany. We could photograph some cranes and some shorebirds. And I
Mm-hmm.
actually had a very similar experience. I was okay taking nice photos, but then we're walking around, walking to the beach, there's all these sanderlings and red knots and stuff. And he did exactly the same thing, just jumped into the mud, got really low to the ground. I'm like, I don't know. I did it. It's still not my favorite thing to do in the world. And now I usually use like a screen on top of the camera so I don't have to lie in the mud anymore. But
Right.
it's definitely whenever I've been out in the field with someone that I admired or that was able to take photos that look different to mine, that I made the biggest jumps. Like seeing people in action was really important. And
Mm-hmm.
another big step was, for instance, when I went to Alan Murphy. Some of you guys might know him. His first ever workshop, I think it was 2007 or 2008, down in Texas. And he was on these ranches, he was doing different setups. He showed us how he got certain birds in the field. And that was something that I could benefit almost the rest of my life from, because it also
Mm-hmm.
gave me a completely new perspective into what can be done in photography. And so for me, it's definitely being out with people that I admire that possibly do something differently to me, and then kind of learning from them how they approach things in the field is definitely what has progressed me the most. Now, of course, we have YouTube as well, and you and I, for
Hmm.
instance, share a lot of those moments in our videos, but there's still a slight difference to seeing people actually doing it in the field than just doing it online. But I definitely wish I had those resources available back then, because back then, we both were on those online forums. People would post a picture, but that was usually about it.
And again, let us know in the comments what your light bulb moment was. And speaking of tours and workshops, I know a lot of people ask us about it, and it would be fun to do it one day, but unfortunately, due to my circumstances, we're not able to. But you never know, one day we might be able to
Might
do
happen.
something together. It might happen.
It's actually something, I think I said it in the past, I would love to organize. Like, some people organize these just events, I guess, where photographers come together. And I think that was one of the moments I enjoyed the most, for instance, when we're at the BirdLife conference in Australia, just coming together with so many people and just talking face to face with people. So I'd love to at some point in the future organize something like this where we can all come together. Because I think meeting people in person is still something special. And it's also something that sort of gets taken away more and more with all the digital stuff.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. The community we have is amazing, and meeting people in person is great. I won't forget having to get selfies taken. That was a new experience when we were getting asked for selfies. That's a bit strange, but it's all part of the experience.
I remember being in Darwin on Fog Dam, and suddenly a car like slams the brakes and people start waving at me. I'm like, oh my God, what have I done? And then they all came running out wanting to take photos. So it's definitely weird that normally people get like recognized on the street, whereas we kind of get recognized when we're by ourselves out in the bush.
Yeah, no, 100%. I've had a number of people approach me at Winton, and it's always fun. So if you see me, come and say hello. So another thing that drastically improved my photos was editing and learning how to edit. We have talked about editing before, but you've set me a challenge for this video. Do you want to share what that is?
Yeah, definitely. Because I think editing and improving your editing workflow is probably one of the most important and best ways for everyone to improve their photography. Because you just learn a few things and suddenly your pictures look so much better, and the whole experience, the in the field and also then the rest, really comes together. And I feel like you can be more proud of your pictures and you can just get so much better of results, and it actually makes more fun to take pictures in the field as well, because even if it's a difficult to edit photo, I can still get a fantastic final result. And that's also why I did my Lightroom and Photoshop masterclasses, to help people along their way understand editing and develop their own workflow.
Hmm.
But now for this video, I used one of my raw files that I also edited in Lightroom in one of the videos that I posted a few weeks ago. So if you like the results, you can check out that video and see how I edited my version of the file. But the idea was that I take a hard to edit image that's pretty dull and dark, high ISO, send it to Duade, and then he edits it and I show my version, and then we can see how different approaches can lead to maybe similar or very different results. But I think the key takeaway here as well, that there's really not necessarily right or wrong with the editing. It's just everyone's personal taste.
Totally agree. So should we have a look at these photos, or how are we going to do it?
Yeah, let's look live. So I can see we had slightly different cropping approaches.
Yeah.
Yours seems a little bit heavier, a little bit on the warmer side, whereas mine, I always like my
Yeah.
images fairly cool and
Yeah.
neutral.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think it's a fantastic way of showing that one raw file can lead to many different results.
One thing that's amazing is this is ISO 25600. So, and the fact that Lightroom has denoise AI built into it, it's kind of magic, isn't it? How well it works.
It's amazing. I mean, the R3 gives you very clean files, but being able to shoot something in the dark rainforest, and it is dark in Australia sometimes, at very high ISO levels is pretty incredible. And then actually being able to get a good usable file out of it is something you would have never thought of even like
No.
5 or 6 years ago. If you shot this with a 7D, it would have been a lot more challenging at that kind of ISO levels. And you can actually shoot certain birds you couldn't really photograph before, or people always resorted to using heavy flash in these scenarios, but these
Hmm.
pictures then never look quite nice. So being able to now photograph a bird like this that lives on the ground in the dark rainforest without flash and still get a good file, I think it's a nice achievement.
What might be really helpful is if we bring up the raw file, we look at it, and then I ask you the question, when you see this, what immediately goes off in your brain? Like, what are you trying to achieve? What is it that you're wanting to bring out of this photo? What are you noticing? And what does it desperately need?
I think obviously looking at the raw file, first of all, you can see it's too dark. Like with all editing, I always like to kind of envision the final result in my head to know what I need to do to the photo. So
Okay.
obviously here, the bird's way too dark. So I need to brighten the bird without making it look unnatural because the bird's too bright and the rest of the image is too dark. So I kind of need to brighten the overall image.
Mm-hmm.
And then obviously, as you said as well in your edit, the background is a little bit problematic. There's these dark brown sticks, there's a few dark spots, and then there's a few bright highlights. So I kind of need to work on balancing that out a little bit. And definitely on the left hand side, I use the gradient in Lightroom, like you can see in the video as well, where I pulled that in and warmed it up and greened it up a little bit as well, just to balance out the color in the background. And then
Mm-hmm.
obviously I always brighten the image overall. I try to bring back the highlights a little bit. And then I just work individually on certain parts of the image that I feel like need balancing out. For instance, by selecting the subject and intersecting that with the brush,
Mm-hmm.
then making the changes and just brushing that into certain parts of the bird, like the bird's belly, to make that less yellow and brighten it up a little bit. And you can do the same on the bird itself as well. Just brighten up the bird without actually brushing onto the background.
Yeah, well, that's a great explanation. And you're doing that obviously every single image that you do. And once you've done it a number of times, it becomes second nature and you just go through and go from there. In terms of the crop, how did you come to the crop? You just wanted the bird to be the more of the focus, or you just felt that that's what worked better?
That's an interesting one. I like your crop as well. I do like the leaves on the right-hand side.
Mm-hmm.
I guess, thought if I eliminate a little bit more of the background, I can take some of that distractingness away. And it also makes the bird stand out more. And then I didn't have to deal with too many of those bright, shiny leaves on the lower right-hand side as
Ah,
well.
yes. Yeah, that was
Because
an
I was
issue. Yep.
editing in Lightroom, it's a little bit harder to do something about these leaves. If I was
Mm-hmm.
in Photoshop, you can pretty easily brush a bit of color over those leaves and make them look darker without being so shiny. Whereas in Lightroom, I feel like that's a little bit more limited or a lot more work. So I left those leaves alone and just decided to crop in a little bit more. But what did you think when I first sent you this photo? Did you think, oh my,
I thought this is a challenge, but
well, that was
very,
the idea.
yeah, true. Very similar to your reasoning. I thought, oh, it's too dark. We need to bring the bird out. Pretty much exactly the same thoughts you had, and just a slightly different process. Very similar though. In
Yeah.
Lightroom, I did the same things that you mentioned, but then I just went into Photoshop because I'm a little bit more comfortable using the tools there
Yeah.
than in Lightroom. It ultimately results in the same outcome. And as I mentioned, the crop, I just like to have a bit more space.
Yeah.
But overall, I think this is an extremely good example to show the before and after. You know, there's no comparison really between them. It goes from this pretty ordinary dark photo to what it was like in the field, and that's why it's so important.
And that's exactly why I say you have to have a workflow where you know what tools to use and how to use them, because it allows you to take an old, dark, noisy image and transform it into a beautiful, nice, vibrant image that looks like it has been taken in totally different conditions.
And actually, it's a bit of fun, and I challenge our viewers to do this. Go back into your catalog and find some of your old noisy photos that you thought at the time, oh no, I can't use that. You can use it now. It's amazing, isn't it? Like, I've gone back and edited a couple of my old photos that for whatever reason I didn't edit them at the time. I thought, no, they're just too noisy, and now they look amazing.
And actually, you can do something else as well. I edited recently a photo of a black grouse that I shot during my everything has to be super tight in the frame time.
Yep.
And now with the generative expand, I could just expand the habitat around it and suddenly got like a nice photo out of it, of the bird that was just crammed into the frame, and just make it a bit wider, boom, and there we go. So the technical abilities now are pretty amazing. And this is actually why I'm happy that I'm not a super harsh deleter when it comes to sort of sorting through my images. I get rid of the ones that I know that are terrible, but I've kept a lot of images as well that weren't great in the past, but I thought maybe have potential, and now can actually go back to some of these files and easily rescue them. And if
Mm-hmm.
you've been too harsh in the past, maybe you've actually deleted photos that could look really good now.
Are you working for a hard drive manufacturer? Have you got a link or a sale or something like that?
No, but I am who keeps them alive, because I do have a fair amount of hard drives.
Without a doubt whatsoever.
I also asked my followers on Instagram to give us some questions for this episode, and we had some very deep and important one. And the first one that definitely stood out to me was, tomato sauce or ketchup and barbecue sauce, does it go in the fridge or out of the fridge? I personally probably would put it in the fridge. I don't know about you guys. Let us know in the comments. But what about you, Dwight? In the fridge or out of the fridge?
For a start, it's definitely sauce. We're in Australia, it's sauce. And I keep it in the fridge. I don't know. Yeah, I guess it is interesting, but it's always in the fridge for me. What about bread? Are you bread in the fridge or out of the fridge?
Ideally out of the fridge, but especially up here, it gets moldy quite quickly if you don't put it in the fridge. So you probably have to put it in the fridge and then back in the toaster or the oven.
All right. Any non-food related questions?
Yes, definitely. There was a few interesting questions all surrounding motivation, how you stay motivated, what happens if you kind of feel like you're in a rut, you're going out, you're not getting any photos. How can you get yourself motivated again or be happy again to go out? And I know you, for instance, you can't travel far, so you're very often going to the same place. Like, how do you get motivated? How do you find the desire to go out again?
That's a really good question. And if I'm being completely honest, my motivation does wane. Sometimes it goes up and down, depending on the time of the year as well and
Of course.
what's going on. But for me, it's the chance to capture something unexpected. So it's the lure of the unexpected for me. And often I'll say, I'm going to go out at this time, at this date, and sort of set myself the goal of doing it. I get all my gear ready prior, so I charge all my batteries, I do everything. I've got the clothes ready. So I basically set myself up. So if I get up early, it's sort of in the truck and then go. Just make sure I grab the right lens and the right camera, but just right the gear. And then I just go and have a good time. And for me, when I get to the field, everything disappears. Like it's an instant transformation for me. As soon as I've got that camera, as soon as I'm at the location, I forget about being tired. I forget about the stress. I forget about getting up early or whatever it might be. So I just remind myself that the point and the reason that I'm doing this is for the joy of being out and taking photos. If you saw my last video, I've been going to this location heaps of times for years and years. And I always knew that there was this big weir, there's a big lake and then a weir that lets water through. And I'd never even contemplated looking at it really. I'd seen it, but I thought, oh, I'll check it out. I'll go for a walk across. And as soon as I do that, I spot some swallows. I'm not sure if they're breeding underneath the weir or what they were doing, but I'm seeing these swallows flying in and out. And my brain just goes, there's a shot there. There's a shot there. And so that's exactly what I did. I just had this vision of the swallow flying through the water, thought it would be interesting, implemented it, and I got one of my favorite shots of the year. I had no idea I was going to get that shot. It wasn't something I even planned. It just happened because I saw it. So I'm curious, have you ever had that experience where you've gone somewhere and unexpectedly ended up with a magic shot?
Well, definitely. I think the more you go out, the luckier you get, or the more
Yep.
opportunities you kind of just run into. I remember going to this boardwalk I'd been going for years, and there wasn't always too much besides a lot of mosquitoes. And then that time around, there was suddenly a noisy pitter hopping around all of the logs on the ground. It was quite tame. I was able to get some shots. So getting out there and kind of getting yourself to go out there is the first step. And I think
Hmm.
the other reason why people might feel burned out or don't want to go out is maybe you're photographing not truly for yourself, but maybe for someone else because you want to post it on Facebook or Instagram or you want to win a competition. And I think then it can become draining because then you're not necessarily photographing something that you enjoy, but you're
Hmm.
trying to create something for someone else. And I think eventually they can definitely feel empty, especially if you don't get the response that you were hoping to get. Like you post your photo on Instagram and then it doesn't get a lot of likes, and
Hmm.
suddenly you're down on yourself. But it shouldn't really be the case because you should be taking photos that speak to you, that what you enjoy. And that's what I try to do these days. It's probably a bit more for me like this with YouTube videos. Like we make YouTube videos every week, we post
Hmm.
them, we think about what content could be good, and then it doesn't get a lot of view and you're kind of down on yourself. But then I tell myself, let's just make another video, share something else, and hopefully people will enjoy that. And so I think ultimately it's really going through that grind. Sometimes we all are motivated on some days and not as motivated on other
Hmm.
days, but just kind of telling yourself, if I go out, I often will bump into an opportunity. Or you try to create something completely different, set yourself a challenge, take a different lens, or
Hmm.
go somewhere completely different. You might bump into something that you didn't expect at all.
That's some really, really good advice. Sometimes just changing lenses will change your photography. And I've mentioned this already. The access to these amazing zooms changed it for me. I've got, I think I might need an intervention, Jan, but a lot of my recent videos, you'll notice they're all backlit, they're all wide, they're all very arty. And that's purely because of these lenses and the ability to change composition and just to get myself excited. Like, I'm just not as motivated now for bird on a stick. I still like it, but it's just, for some reason it doesn't quite grab me like it used to. For now I'm just looking for shapes and looking for different things, and often that's just with cormorants, could even be an ibis. That shot, I love that shot you took of that ibis. It's Australia's ugliest bird, and it's one of your and I reckon it's one of your best shots. Like, I
Yeah,
absolutely love that. So just being different, shooting into the sun sometimes, and just
yeah.
try doing these different things and challenging yourself. And I think being part of a community as well. And I agree about Instagram. That's why I don't necessarily post on there, is that I started taking shots for that, and it kind of took a lot of my motivation away. There's nothing wrong with sharing. Just be aware that do it for the right reasons, I guess, and have a lot of fun. And yeah, it's great. Sometimes you can join camera clubs, and if you've got a friend to go out with, that's often even more
Yeah.
motivating to share that experience. Also related to motivation is, you told me you're about to undertake a massive epic trip into inland Australia. How many kilometers are you traveling?
I don't know yet, but it will be well beyond 10,000 kilometers or like 8,000 miles or something. So definitely a bit of a drive, but hopefully there will be some birds as well, because otherwise it can get quite boring.
Well, let us know what is your target. So the next time we chat, you can show us some of your results.
Ooh,
So what are you hoping to get? Like, I'm curious, you must have an idea of a couple of species that you're after, and then we can check afterwards to see if you got them.
well, if I say it now, am I going to jinx it?
Maybe for a good thing. It might be a good thing. You might get the well wishes of everyone
Let's
watching.
see. I would like to see some Naretha bluebonnet parrots. I'd like to see some more pink cockatoos. In an ideal world, I'd like to see a scarlet-chested parrot, but that would be
Oh.
very unlikely, probably. And then
Hmm.
maybe on the way back, also see some eastern ground parrots, and hopefully lots of other parrots, Port Lincoln parrots, and some other ringnecks, and lots of other cool, fun things. Maybe quail thrush.
Yeah, cool. Sounds good. I can't wait. I look forward. I wish I could go along with you. We had a lot of fun the last time
We have to
we
make it
got together.
happen.
Yeah, one day for sure. So I wish you the best on that trip. I can't wait to see the photos. It's going to be
Hopefully
amazing.
there will be some.
Yeah, I'm sure there will be.
And I think that's a good time to end up this video. I have to still pack for my trip as well. It was always fun talking to you. Of course, check out Duade's channel. Also, he just reached a 100,000 follower milestone. So congratulations to
Thanks.
you on that. It's amazing that we've both been able to achieve it in such a sort of short time frame, both at the same time. So that's awesome. Big achievement there. Congratulations. And
Thanks,
of
mate.
course, from all of you, we would love to hear in the comments all your thoughts about this video. What keeps you motivated? And other than that, check out Dwight's channel. Of course, hit the like button and the subscribe button on my channel. And we will see you guys in another video soon. Bye.